We can actually go to the office now if we want, which is nice. But you have to have like a negative COVID test to get in. And you have to wear a mask the whole time, and you can't touch anything. You have to stay at least 6 feet away from everyone. You can't look at your boss. You can't talk.
There's a saying that if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. And one of the biggest areas that has been affected by COVID-19, of course, has been in the area of employment and employees and employers. I'm here with Sun Media's employment and labor columnist, Suneera Chaudhary from Workley Law. Suneera, in 2021, we heard things like accommodation. We are going to work from home, a hybrid model, the great quit. We now have this Omicron variant that is wreaking havoc. And now many companies who were going to go back to the office have now changed plans. We're on the cusp of 2022. What are we going to be looking for in terms of employment trends in the next year?
Well, Adrienne, one of the first things that we're going to be seeing, we've just seen the passing of Bill 27, which is, of course, the right to disconnect laws that we've been anticipating. It sort of hit us right at the end of 2021. So we're going to see employers moving really quickly to implement policy here, not because they want to, but because they have to. So we're going to see employers, especially for the purposes of retention, for hiring, really moving to protect employee time, which means when we have employees working remotely, many have complained that's been a huge trend of burnout over the last few years, a trend towards work-life balance, quote unquote, and creating parameters around that remote working in the new year. So we're going to see that for sure. We're also going to see a change in employment agreements. For any employer that's tried to restrict competition of their employees who want to move on, we've also seen in this new piece of legislation, Adrienne, a change in the law with respect to whether or not employers can restrict employees from moving on to competitors. We know now that employers are going to be largely limited from doing that. So because of that, we are going to see massive overhauls to employment agreements. We're going to see a lot of attention being given to mental health in the workplace and also the way employers work. When it comes to the right to disconnect, many employers might be finding themselves in violation of that legislation. So they're going to have to catch up very, very quickly.
Which, of course, is going to keep employment and labor lawyers like yourselves very busy because employees are going to understand their rights and know their rights. This bill that you're discussing is in the province of Ontario. Do you anticipate that other provinces and jurisdictions, or even potentially federally, that something like that could be adopted, which really changes the landscape when it comes to the employee-employer relationship?
I think it's going to be a huge trend across the nation, partly because when we see most employers trying to adapt to a remote work policy for the long haul, we don't see many employers wanting to have full-time in-person work ever again. The parameters around how people work at home is going to be very important. Ontario is doubling down on the right to disconnect laws being a way to attract business, to attract talent to stay in Ontario. If that gamble pays off, then we are definitely going to see more provinces jumping to introduce legislation like this as well. It could be a trendsetter for North America in general. We've seen tech companies already trying to do things to retain talent, like overtime being compensated at higher numbers, no Zoom meetings on Fridays, unlimited vacation. This is going to be another new introduction in terms of employee benefits that I think will be here to stay.
Suneera, with respect to employers, we've seen a lot of government compensation for a whole host of programs that came from the federal government, the provincial government, municipalities. What is it that we're looking at in 2022 that employers are going to be able to secure dollars in order to keep and retain their talent?
Well, we know one thing that's really going to help employers is that EIDL, the infectious disease emergency leave, it has been extended until the summer of 2022. And while that's not new dollars, Adrienne, that's going to help employers that have laid off a lot of their workforce because of COVID way back in March 2020. It's going to continue into 2022. What that means is employers are not going to have to bring those folks back to work. They're not going to have to decide yet if they're going to terminate their workforce. They're allowed to put the pause button on a lot of their labor to wait this Omicron variant out. That's a big boon for employers. Many employees might decide to move on to greener pastures, which will help employers at the end of the day, not having to pay out severance agreements, to actually have to pay Employment Standards Act minimums. It could be a lot of extra dollars in the pockets of employers.
It's going to be a big challenge in the world of employment and employment law and labor and negotiations. And of course, there's not a one size fits all solution. Let us know what you think. Let us know below in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, we want to keep you informed at the Toronto Sun. Subscribe to our Midday Sun, where we keep you informed and entertained.